Hi friends, today we are going to discuss about required file system for SAP HANA and required file system for application server. So as you observed, whenever we are going to install HANA database into the system, so we are going to get these file systems as you observed, like HANA data, HANA lag, HANA shared, user SAP. So these are the file system, or these are the directories we are going to observe while we are installing the HANA database into the system. So what is the purpose of HANA data? HANA data value. This HANA data file system is having the actual data which is having with the HANA database. And coming to HANA log, the log information about the HANA database having in HANA log. And what about HANA shared? It is having the shared binaries and tools information in the HANA shared directory. And coming to user SAP SID, like you may take it like a SID is nothing but database SID here, and instance specific profiles which is about 50 to 100 GB. Like here user SAP SID is here in coming to SAP HANA, you can take it as this HANA DB SID. And coming to file systems for required file system for SAP application server. So whenever we are going to install our SAP application into the system on top of HANA database, so we are going to observe these file systems are going to be created in the system. So the first one is user SAP SID, like this SID represents the application server's SID, and this SAP MNT after SID, this is also application SID. And next user SAP trans, this is the directory. These are the three directories. So whenever we are going to install application into this HANA database, we are going to get these file systems. And in interview they may ask you like, so how you are going to do the sizing for the HANA database or applications. So this is the like you can expect in every interview, not only every interview, like most common interview question for everyone. So the required file systems for SAP HANA, as we discussed, these are the main file systems, these are the four. So and what about the sizing? How HANA database, how SAP recommends to divide the sizing while you are installing a system into the SAP into the system. So like we have a OS team with us, so we are going to give the things to them, like what kind of how much amount of data they are going to create for this file system, how much like memory size is required for this HANA log, how much size is required for HANA shared, HANA user SAP, like this SID. So these things we are going to give it to the OS team. So that's why it's a very important thing we have to know. As a basis consultant, we have to give to them, and based upon our requirement they are going to create the sizing for our system. So we have to know. So the first one is HANA data. For HANA data, the 4 size of RAM we required. The first one is HANA data, 4 into the size of the ROM, size of the RAM. The next one is HANA log, 1 into size of RAM. HANA shared, half of the RAM or 1 into RAM size. And the next one is user SAP HANA DB SID. It requires minimum 100 GB, 50 to 100 GB, you can give it like that. So you have to remember these three things are major important. So how you are going, how you are going to do your sizing part in your system, they may ask you like that. So we have a OS team, we are going to give it to them as per our recommendation. We are going to give it to the sizing part to them. They are going to create the file system for us. You need to tell like this. So for example, if you take the example 128 GB is RAM size, so 128 into 4, that means 512 GB is required file this directory. That means this file system is required. HANA data file system or directory is required 512 GB of RAM size. And next HANA log, 1 into size of RAM, 1 into 128 GB, it requires 128 GB of space. And next, HANA shade required half of the RAM, or else you can tell them like 1 into RAM size, like SAP recommends you to half of the RAM size, that means 64 GB is suitable. Like you can give it for 1 into RAM size also, that is okay for that. That means 128 GB is also fine. And the next one is USR SAP SID. This is like you can give it like 100 GB or 50 GB also fine. This is instance specific files. This is not required much space. Space is required. You can give it like even 20 GB also fine. But SAP recommends you to, like nowadays most of the people are giving 50 GB to 100 GB. You can tell like that. So these three things are very important. So whenever you are going to tell into the interview, so 4 into RAM sizes for HANA data, and HANA log is for 1 into RAM, and HANA shared in the sense you can remember that way. The shared, half of share 128 GB into half shared, that means 64 GB, or 1 into RAM size, you can tell like that way. You need to remember this thing only. Everything is you can mention 1 into RAM size. There is no issue on that. Okay. And next one is file system, required file systems for application server. Whenever we are going to install application, we are going to get user SAP MNT, this is the mount directory, and user SAP trans. So these three file systems or directories going to be created into the HANA database system. So this user SAP SID, this SID is different, this SID is different. This SID represents HANA database SID, this SID represents application SID. So your SAP SID instance specific executables required minimum 100 GB, and SAP MNT SID, this is a mount directory, you can call it as central transport files. We have it 100 GB, like you can tell them 100 GB also. And central transport and for profiles, we have SAP in mount directory. So most used directory is SAP MNT directory, we are going to use it in. So whenever we are going to working with the applications. So and USR SAP trans, so transport directory, it represents the transportation of files, data and everything. So which is required more data, which is required more size, that's why we are giving it 200 GB for that. And this is like a USR SAP SID. Here for HANA database SID is HANA database SID. Here USR SAP SID is applications SID. You remember that way, these two are different. And coming to why this user SAP trans directory required is more space, more size. Why it is required more size means it is required for large transport and exports is required. For that purpose we are using we required more space, and as well as the storage of core files and data files also we are going to store it in user SAP trans directory only. By default the system is going to occupy this space for like location for this user SAP trans directory. And next one is, and also we are going to save some of the buffer for long-term storage purpose also. Buffers also storing in the transport directory. So that's why this user SAP trans directory is required more size compared to all these things, compared to these things. So you just remember 4 into HANA data is having actual data, that's why we are giving 4 into RAM size for HANA. This is the 512 GB as example I am taking. So you just remember this way 4 into RAM size of HANA data and 1 into HANA log and half of the HANA shade, and you just tell them like user SAP SID is 100 GB or 50 GB, and user SAP coming to application server, user SAP SID is required 100 GB, SAP MNT mount directory is also required 100 GB, but you have to tell them like user SAP trans directory is required 200 GB. So these are the major file systems or directories required for files for sizing, and as well as the we are going to work with the OS team. So yeah, thanks for watching. Please do subscribe and like, share the video.